Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, Bitcoin is taking a big dump. It looks like we're going down to the bull market support band. I put a video out yesterday saying we could probably have a good chance to hold here, but it looks like the market is not wanting to do that at all, which inevitably, when you look back at it, it's like it probably this is the necessary route for it to go, right? We've been talking about the bull market support band for a while. The fact that it took out this low ever so slightly and it came back up gave me hope that it could probably be a higher low, but it just took out the low, so it's probably likely we're going down to this 55 area. If we look at total 3, it's already approaching the bull market support band. So we'll see if, support can hold in here. But it's looking like it wants to, retest the bull market support band as well. I mean, if Bitcoin comes down and hits it, we're definitely going to hit it with total 3. The big thing is not breaking this low. If we do break that low, we're probably going to come all the way back down to this area here and back test this previous resistance we broke out. We're probably going to back test it if we lose the bull market support band and if we lose that low. So we'll keep an eye on Bitcoin. The altcoins, look at Theta fuel. It still is in a flat. We're still making a higher low. It's got plenty of wiggle room. When I look at XRP versus Bitcoin, look at this. We have a bullish daily engulfing candle here. So that's good. I mean, at least we have something good to talk about here. When I look at Dogecoin, we're already back at the bull market support band. So we really want to see support get held in here. I mean, when you look at it, it doesn't look so great, right? You have a massive shoulder, a head here, and then another shoulder. So, if we lose that, then it's going to be a pretty big fall to the downside. We would lose this, according to the measured move, we would lose pretty much this backtest area down in here. So we really don't want to see that happen. And you say, well, who cares about Dogecoin? Well, because, if Dogecoin does something like that, then, you could think about other coins in that segment, which would just cause more bearish perceptions about others. But when I look at XRP, we still have a beautiful pullback here. We're still holding. We have this big drop. We came all the way up, and now we're pulling back. So we have plenty of room before we break this low. We don't really want to break it, but we want to, eventually find some support in here. So let's talk about that with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is right dangling on the edge here. And we have a bearish daily engulfing candle, so it doesn't look very good at all. It looks like it's going to come down and break into the bull market support band. If it doesn't, then that's great, right? We're basically hanging by a thread. It could be a liquidity grab. It could be a fake out, right? So you got to always know that it could be a fake out. Usually you take a line here and put it right about there, and you want to see it come down and tag it ever so slightly. So if I expand it here, you can see we already broke it right here. This was the low. So we already broke it. So it's, there's a lot of liquidity resting under here. So are the shorts piling up? What's happening, right? Because if you look over here, you can kind of see that happened over here. Like I'll put the low here and about here. And you can see, right, this was a liquidity grab, right, where you came down, you made a low, you came back up, you came all the way back down, and you took out the low, which grabbed in all this liquidity, and then you took out this wick here, which grabbed even more liquidity. So it wasn't a complete breakdown, right? We just basically we swept the lows and then took it back up. So, okay, is that happening again? Well, it could. It could be, but um, the difference here is you can see as this was coming down, we started to stall out a little bit, stall out in here, and then have that flush. So this is a pretty big candle. It wouldn't surprise me at all to hit the bull market support band. If we do hit the bull market support band, that's actually a good thing. I've been talking about it, since we've had this correction, saying the possibility of us hitting it is very, very high, right? But over the last week or two, I said, yeah, maybe we don't have to hit it. The reason why, and I'll just go over it again, is because of what happened over here, right? We have an A, we came up in a B, and now we're coming down in C. We would have bumped our head, found it as resistance, continued down into an A, B, C, right? So the fact that we came down here and we grabbed this liquidity, we took out the low, right? Which basically we closed below it, freaking everybody out. Okay, we're going down. And then we quickly came back to the upside. It made me believe, okay, well, we have a chance now that this could be a 1-2 and we can continue higher, right? That's what we talked about yesterday. But I did also say yesterday we can easily break it, and that's exactly what we did. So it's a minor error. It's not really a big deal, because like I said, it could go either way. The fact that we broke this here, and the fact that we had a nice impulse and a pullback, the fact that it matched up with a lot of the fractals, and also the fact that we had this liquidation here in the altcoins. So what's interesting though is when you look at something like XRP versus Bitcoin, I mean, look at it. It looks pretty nice. We have a bullish engulfing candle, right? So that's a good thing. Let's check out Theta versus BTC. So when you look at Theta versus BT, it's basically the same as Theta versus USD, which is fine. It's fine. It's not, a big deal. And with all fairness, right? XRP versus BTC has gotten crushed way more than Theta versus Bitcoin. And then also Theta versus Bitcoin had a bottom, right? It sort of rounded out here and then had a big pump to the upside. So this pullback is to be expected. So when you look at Theta or XRP versus BTC, you could see, we've only had, basically it's the selling pressure has been much more exhausted to the downside. You can see right here we're started curling up here. We have that first drop. We have the first reaction. We sort of went sideways, and now we're starting to pump to the upside. So when you look at Theta versus BTC, it already did that, right? It's already ahead of the game. We came down here, right? We had that initial move up. We went sideways. So basically, this candle right here is kind of like where XRP versus Bitcoin is now, right? So if I were to just cut all of this in half, right here, just for you to look at that's kind of what XRP versus BTC is doing now. So I'll go back one more time. We can see here. So there it is right there. So if it's going to continue to follow Theta, we could see something like this where we get another pump, take out this resistance here, grab some liquidity, and then bring it back down. Right? So Theta versus BTC is down here. So, one's going up, one's already down. So which is probably Theta versus BTC is probably going to eventually reverse out of here. So let's go back and, looking at Theta versus USD, we can see we have retested just about here. We've retested the bull market support band. So if I just draw a line here and extend it a little bit, we can see we tagged it again, which is good, you know, because if we come back to the last time, that's exactly what we did here, right? So if Bitcoin, so this is, you know, this is exactly what we've been talking about. If Bitcoin breaks its low, right, we want the altcoins to hold their low. And that's exactly what we see happening. This is a good thing, right? If the altcoins lose their low, because Bitcoin, you know, and with all fairness, Bitcoin is not even close to its bull market support band quite yet, right? I mean, when you look at it, it still has a ways to go here. We're still pretty far away from the bull market support band. So if we just have a big drop down in here, you know, it could be kind of a disaster for Theta versus USD if the low doesn't hold, right? Now, we're already pretty close. We don't have much wiggle room in here, right? So basically our last line in the sand is down here at $1.71, about $1.71. So we got a little bit of room here, and we're still not completely in the band yet. So, you know, if Bitcoin continues to capitulate down to the bull market support band, then what move is that? Let's see, from where we are now, that's still about 7%, between 6 and 8%. If I go down here, you're about 9%. So between 6 and 9%, and let's see, if we go to XRP versus USD, from the low of where we are, we're approximately, you know, more than about 15%. So when you look at XRP versus Bitcoin, right, we're pumping. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign to see that we're pumping here on Bitcoin's dump. Which basically means, you know, when you look at XRP versus USD, we're still dumping, right? Everything's dumping, but it's not dumping as hard as, say, Bitcoin is, right? I mean, you can see the last four candles, basically 4, 8, and well, this candle just started. So I would say the last 8.5 hours, we've been sort of bottoming out in here. So if you go to Bitcoin versus USD, we are finding a bounce in here. So for the last 4, 8.5, we've been completely dumping. Okay, so you know, are we grabbing liquidity? A lot of times, if we get stuck under here, right? If I draw a line here, we dump down, we come all the way back up, and we get rejected in here, and then we start coming down again, breaking this low. Then you're going to be like, okay, we're, you know, it's basically just continuing to increase the odds that we're, you know, making our way back down here. And the big test, right? The big ultimate test is, will we get a big bounce out of here, right? Are we going to flag out in here a little bit before we get a big bounce? And that's kind of what we want to see. And if this happens, then it's actually, like I've been saying, it's actually a good thing, not a bad thing, because if we come down and we test it and we bounce out of here, then it's like, okay, this ABC is over with. But the fact that it took out this low and it came back up, we had the chance of making a higher low. We just couldn't do it. But even if we did, let's say we did do it and we started inching our way back up, I would still be kind of like, a little bit of hesitancy for breaking the high, because we still have this dark cloud over us, which is actually beneath us. of it not being tested, right? I mean, you can see back down in here, we didn't get to test it. So, I mean, just to give you an idea of how important it is, go back to 2017, you can see, let me zoom out a little bit. You can see all the times we've tested in here. We broke out, we test it, break out, or pump up, we test it, right? Pump up, we test it, pump up, we test it, right? Little pump up, we test, pump up, test, pump up, test, right? Pump to the upside, we test it. Back up, we test it. So, I mean, look at all these tests in here. 1, 2, 3, almost 4. And a bunch of tests in here, 5, 6. I would say around, 10 times if you count all of the ones where it continually tested it. Now, when you look at the last cycle, right, we only tested it once. But that's why the cycle was so short, because we only tested it once, and it broke above the all-time high. Let's see, it broke above the all-time high right here. So right here. So basically the whole bull run was from here to there. So that was the bull run right there. And everybody, said, oh, it's too short. It was barely nothing, right? So, I mean, that's because it didn't test it, right? So the fact that if we do come down and test it, and we do hold it, we're buying ourselves more time, right? We want to buy some time in here where we come down, we test it, right? And we continue breaking out. Then that means we're going to have this move that hopefully, potentially not financial advice comes, right? When this comes, we're going to want, it's going to be looked at as strong momentum, right? So on the contrary, if we were, I just put a video out yesterday saying if we hold this low, which it kind of looks like we could, but obviously we didn't, if we came back up, right, the momentum wouldn't be as strong. So just understand that, right? You kind of like, you rip the Band-Aid off so you can get a bigger slingshot reaction, right? So think about like a slingshot. If you pull it back this much, you get this much, right? If you pull it back if you pull it back all the way, you get a bigger shot to the upside. So, but a lot of times, I mean, I guess some of the times, when you get these big pullbacks, it's very dangerous, right? Because number one, it doesn't really look, number one, if we do get down here, then it's very nerve-wracking, because if we break this, if we come down, kind of bounce up a little bit and continue down, then it's going to be a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 to the downside, and we're probably going to dump big time, right? And we would probably come all the way back down to between 40 and 48K, 47K. I would say 47K is a good area of interest if we lose it, right? So then that would be, a pretty big correction. And then if that's the case, we would look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of this would be A. Then we come up into a B, right? And then we come down for C. And we would probably break it, right? Before then swooping to the upside. So it would be a monster ABC, but it would be fitting of a fourth wave, right? Maybe not that as big as I've drawn it, but something, pretty big. Like, look how big this was in here. This was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look how big the correction was just from this wave. So we had 5 waves to the upside. Why can't it be the same amount? Well, when you're in an impulse and you're breaking above the all-time high, the idea is for us to bounce off and continue pumping, right? But if it is going to stall out in here, I can take a bars pattern just to give us an idea, not from a structure perspective, but sort of from a time perspective. right? And I can put that right here just so we can sort of visualize in here what we're dealing with. Now, it's interesting because it's kind of looking the same a little bit here. You can kind of see, right? We come down, we come back up. We come down, we come back up. And then we come down and we barely take out the low. We come down, we barely take out the low. And then what do? We bounce back to the upside, right? And it looked like a fake out. And then what happened? We have 1, 2, 3. We came back down. So what do we see here? We came back to the upside and we have 1, 2, or I would say 1, 2, 3. Kind of like this, 1, 2, 3, right? We get down here and maybe we miss it. Maybe we don't hit it at all, right? Before then popping back to the upside. And kind of like like I said, a big A, like this was an A, B, C, and then we went. It was a flat, or the C wave didn't break the low though, which was always nice, right? So the fact that it's kind of looking similar to this, maybe that's kind of what we're in store for. And then, it's always a situation when you get into summer, right? The old saying, sell in May and go away. Well, maybe that's, the theme every year, right? But no, seriously, if we go into the summer, a lot of times as you go into summer, you have a summer lull. I was kind of hoping we would get one more pump and a breakout before we get into the summer boring months. But it is what it is. If we could still get it too, we could still get a nice pump, before, summer. Maybe we get a bullish summer. It's very hard. Crypto is seasonality, right? Most of the bullish months are October, November, December, and through spring. And then sort of summer and the fall is kind of boring, lackluster. So continuing to follow this fractal here, right? One, we have this pump or dump, pump, break the low, dump, pump, break the low. We kind of come back up to the upside in a retracement, retracing this way. We come up, retracing this way about halfway. Then we come down and we take out the low. We come down and we take out the low. We get a nice pump, but it's only a retracement of this first move to the downside. I know the chart's getting cluttered, but bear with me. And then we have one more dump, and then we have one more dump. Then we shoot up, right? We shoot back up. Maybe we take the high, maybe not. And then we sort of drizzle back down, find a higher low, hopefully, and be on our way. And from a time perspective, that would kind of make sense, And then when you zoom out, first, let me just put this here, something like that. I mean, you can kind of see the correction we're dealing with, right? A lot of unknown and uncertainty was down in here, right? A lot of uncertainty was down in here. So maybe a lot of uncertainty is here. Now, this could take some time. Now, remember, the last time we broke above the all-time high, it took approximately from that hit there, it only took about 20 days. I mean, I think we're well over 20 days. Let's see, from the top here to here. Yeah, so we're already way past that. Okay, so let's go back even further. The other time we broke above the all-time high is right here. So I'll say this, and then as soon as we broke it, it was about 113 days. So it was quite a long time. So to measure it from the bottom was about 80 days, right? So 80 days for a bottom, right? And remember, this was a flat. This was a running flat. We came up, all-time high. We had a big dump. We came all the way up. We broke the top. And then we came down and we tested it. We tested it once, We almost tested it here, right? So, and then, yeah, so about 80 days. So if we go back over here, and this was the fractal some of us were looking at here. Obviously, that didn't play out, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. Remember, you know, we're still above the bull market support band. Again, look at Bitcoin's last bull run. Look how massive this thing was. And in order to get this big thing, you have to come and test it, test it, test it, test it, test it, right? You got to keep testing it. So that's just the name of the game. So we haven't tested it at all. We haven't tested it once since we broke it. We fell below here, right? We broke above, but we didn't test it. So when we had this expanded flat here, I was hoping we did, and I say we'd probably pay for it later on, right? We came back up. You know, the altcoins did test it. So that's why I was a little bit conflicted. Well, maybe we have a chance of not having to go through it. But obviously, right, it's looking like, you know, it's pretty bearish right now. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to happen today, right? It doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. This could play around in here for a while. Let's look into the smaller time frame, right? A lot of people are probably freaking out right now. But, you know, we have a safety net down here. Until we break that safety net, then there's no reason to, you know, get upset. We have an A, we have a B, and we have 1, 2, 3. This could be 4. It's pretty big for a 4, right? The proportionality, that's why I kind of ruled it out as a wave 4, because of the proportionality. But hey, it is what it is, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're coming down for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we get 5, right? And that would make sense. We have an A, right? We have a B, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if this is an A, B, C, then that's an A, B, C, and we find some support in here, right? Start to pump up a little bit and then continue to break out. Now, the ETFs launched in China or Hong Kong, a lot of people were probably buying it because they thought, oh, well, if the American ones do it. No, if the American ones came out and it pumped, then the Hong Kong ones definitely have to pump. That's not true, right? They're trading it. So they can actually short, right, the ETF. They don't have to just buy it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are, but, you know, probably a lot of people are waiting to buy the dip. Bitcoin hasn't really gave a nice big dip like XRP and Theta did, right? Theta was a 55% dump. So that's why it's more important for Theta to hold than to hold it, right? Because it's already down here. Bitcoin is not yet down here. Bitcoin is still, you know, hanging by support. It sort of dipped its toe beneath it, but it hasn't completely fell through yet. So I put a line right about there, and we're sort of right on that line now. So actually I like to use these lines because they are perfectly straight. So let's see, was it a liquidity grab? Maybe, right? Could it be Wyckoff? It could. It could be Wyckoff, right? It could be a Wyckoff situation where, you know, you have this move up, right? You come back down, and then you come back without taking out the top, and then you develop the spring. So we're developing the spring phase. Here's our resistance in here. We break the resistance or the support, right? In the spring. Right, in the spring, and then we sort of curl back up and we, you know, consolidate in here for a little bit and then take off. Now, it's not going to be a straight line. Just because I drew it that way doesn't mean it's a straight line. There's going to be a lot of pullbacks and uncertainty, right? Especially a lot of doubt. The sentiment is really rough right now. A lot of people are like, it's not looking so good. So, you know, just have to wait out the storm. If you're a hodler, there's nothing to worry about, right? The only painful part about being a hodler is the time, right? But if you're patient, what else do you have to do, right? There's nothing else to, it's kind of like, what choice do we have? We have no choice. We have no choice in the matter. We have to wait. We have to wait it out. But the best part about it is, look how long it's been correcting, right? The good thing about it is we're, battling the all-time high. This is major resistance up in here because you're battling the all-time high. Number two, we've been really correcting for a while. Really, this first dump was the start of the correction, I would imagine, because, that back in the beginning of March, right, when we had that first dump, I was looking at this as a flat, but but you don't really know until, because it can turn into a bigger flat or it can turn into a bigger correction. If a correction seems a certain way, it can always turn into something bigger. So we as the days go on, we just adapt to it, right? We see, okay, now it's not that, so we can rule it out, no big deal, right? Unless you're trading with a lot of leverage and you're like biting your fingernails and you're like worried that you're going to be liquidated, then that's gambling. You're not doing it correctly, right? If you're trading, just trade $100, and only risk, right, $5. Really, you should only risk 2% of your account, between 1% and 2%. So if you have $100, you can only really risk $3, right? If you, even if you have $10,000, right, you can afford to risk a little bit more, but the percentage is still the same. So just some food for thought there. It's not what we wanted. I was really hoping, this would be a liquidity grab, a pump to the upside, and then a pullback. Same thing with the fractal. We had that liquidity dump. It was a good shot that we came up. But now that we came down, I'm actually kind of not, it's fine, right? It's actually better this way. Yes, it's going to take more time. Yes, it sucks in the meantime, but it's kind of like, it's like when you're a kid and you want to eat the dessert before you eat the dinner, like your mom would say, eat your vegetables first, right? Or get that out of the way so you can enjoy the best part of the meal, right? The actual meat and potatoes of the meal. Terrible example, but you see what I mean. So we're kind of dangling here by a thread. So, we could get a pump, right, and retrace. Let me zoom in here. And let's go to the 15-minute chart. We do have some bullish divergence on the 15-minute chart. You can see the price going down and the RSI going up, but it really, divergences is one thing, right? Divergences can easily be taken out, especially when the divergence gets so long and the RSI, gets up here above the 50 line. Then it has more room to go back down, right? So if we count, it's a little bit early to count waves in here, but if I would say 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We could get a bounce. Now this is just speculation. Don't put any emphasis in it, but we have this big chart move down. We could come back up and retrace it. If we come back up in 3 and it starts resisting in here and starts dumping, we're probably going to break the low. And if we do break the low, then this just counts as another wave, right? So we can see Let's see, how would we do that here? Trying to see how I would count it as a C leg on the smaller time frames. Obviously, this is a 1-2. Then I would expect this whole thing to be 3, right? This would be 4, and now we're in 5. So, is 5 finish, or is this wave 1 of 5? Wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, something like that. That could be the case, right? Something to that effect, where we, and then if that happens, if we get 5 in here and we're on the bull market support band and we have a nice bounce off of it with a 3-way pullback, then that would be a beautiful area to sort of dollar cost average buying the dip, right? A proper dip. And not for Bitcoin really, but for the altcoins, before we get that next pump to the upside. So, remember, anything can happen. Anything can happen. So just be aware of that. Technical analysts can only take you so far. And so far, it's actually been, right on track, right? With an A and a B. And we're in the process of that C leg. The big misconception, I think, is the time it takes, right? Because, a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by, but, it's still maturing. The count still has to fulfill all the waves. And then sometimes it'll make you think like, okay, it's probably done now, but it's part of a bigger structure where we come down here. Now, we might not have to come down there, right? We might not have to. So, that's the interesting part about it. So now I want to talk about the monthly chart, because the month is about to end. And I want to show you something very interesting, not on the monthly chart, right? But the 2-month chart. So if we go to the 2-month chart, we were about to close above it. That was kind of the idea here, right? The 2-month chart is actually going to end today. So that's kind of a bummer that we didn't get the breakout or the close above, right? It happened literally the day that the monthly close was going to happen. We sort of have this, and to be honest, this 2-month candle is not pretty at all. It's a strong rejection. Here. So, will it, be followed by a candle that gets to test it with a breakout candle? Yeah, it could still happen. But as it looks now, it's not very